Hello, everyone. This is Adam, and welcome to our webinar tonight. Just a couple of housekeeping notes before we begin. I have Mark Greenstein from Ivy Bound Test Prep in Connecticut here to present to us tonight. He's a test prep expert, and he'll do the majority of the presenting. As we move throughout the webinar, just keep in mind that everyone will be muted, and if you have any questions, there's a chat speech bubble on the bottom right of your control panel. And if you actually get disconnected for any reason, your Wi-Fi goes out or what have you, you don't need to close down your screen. All you have to do is dial back in using the telephone with the instructions we sent you, and you should be reconnected. We are recording the session as well, so if you miss a lot of it for any reason, we could probably send that to you in a couple of days. Okay, so we're going to get started right now. Mark, I'm going to unmute you right now. So, Mark, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Hello, everybody.
Okay, so let me begin by talking about the basic score reports. Hopefully all of you have received your score reports that Patty emailed you instructions on how to get from your dashboard. If for some reason you had trouble doing that, then certainly email her back. She won't be able to reply tonight, but she could make sure she gets you that score report tomorrow. If you don't have the score report in front of you, then certainly just pay attention with what's on the screen, because that's going to be the most important content. Mark is going to take us through a variety of questions for a number of different sections on both the SAT and the ACT to help you understand a little bit more how the tests differ, and just basically to help you understand which test is best suited for you. Now, as you look at the score reports, and I have a cover page for one of them on my screen right now, and if you notice on that front page, on the left is your SAT score outcome, and then right below that, for example, it says 1030, and below it, it says it's equivalent to an ACT score of a 22. And then over on the right side, this student scored a 23 on the ACT, which is equivalent to an SAT 1070. So when we compare the two, this student did about 40 points better on the ACT. So when there is a difference of about 40 or 50 points or more, we recommend that you focus on the test that you scored better on. However, and this will apply to some of you, the difference between your scores is only marginal. In that case, it's going to be completely up to you to decide which test you want to focus on. And you'll base that decision on the information you learned from this call, plus going through your test booklet afterwards, as well as your experience from taking the test, if you were able to remember how each section differed in terms of overall difficulty. Our goal for you is, by the end of tonight, you have a clear idea of which way you're going to focus, and then you begin prepping for either the SAT or the ACT this winter over basically a 6-week period. That's generally how the courses are set up. And whether you take a course or you do it on your own, you're going to want to prep for 6 to 8 weeks in general. And then that will put you in the position to take either the SAT or ACT 2 times during the spring. And just so you know, the ACT is available in April and June, and the SAT is available in March, May, and June. We recommend you taking either of them 2 times. We'll get into a little bit more on this later, and Mark can answer some specific questions if anyone has with regard to the essay section on these tests. The essay section is optional, and the diagnostic test that you all took did not include the essay. It did include the writing and language section on the SAT, but that's different than the essay. We recommend in general that students take whichever test they're going to take, they take it with the essay at least 1 time. Most schools across the country do not require the essay, but since you all don't know the schools that you're going to be applying to completely, then it's a good idea to have one under your belt with the essay. Okay. Now, hopefully all of you have kept your test booklets, which we gave you on Saturday morning, December 9th, when you took the test. And we asked you to keep hold of those, because in the back of the test booklet are answer keys, solution keys, and lots of strategies. So hopefully you're taking notes. And just make note that on page 70 of your test booklet begins the solution keys. And it will go question by question through the entire test and tell you why each question answer is the way it is. And then on page 90 gives you about a dozen pages on things you should know when comparing the SAT to the ACT. So those are all inside your test booklet, and you should be able to use your test booklet in conjunction with this diagnostic report that I'm showing you that you have at home. So as you look at the diagnostic report, on the first page, it gives you a general overview of how you did on the ACT versus the SAT, green being the correct answers, red being the incorrect answers. And then as you go through each subsequent page, it will take you through every section of each of the tests. And I know this is a little light. The print on this, the scan on this did not come out very well. But basically, this is showing the ACT reading section and how the student did. Over here on the right side, it is showing us how the student did on each of the content areas. Right here, these are content areas for that section. So it tells us how the student did on those content areas. And then over here on the left, it has question by question with the correct answer over here in this column. Okay. And if the student got the question wrong, this is the answer that they indicated over here in the middle. And it's going to indicate here on the right what content area it has to do with. So basically, green means the student got the question right, and red means it was incorrect. There's no good or bad scores. Everything is relative to schools you're applying to. And just make sure that you are taking your preparation seriously this winter. You can use this diagnostic report along with the information in the back of the booklet, and that may be a great start for some of you. A lot of you will need additional preparation, and we could talk a little bit more about some of those options toward the end of our call. Okay, let me just see. Before I pass it over to Mark, I just want to see if there's any other questions here. Okay. Okay, I think I covered all the housekeeping rules I wanted to cover. Mark, I'm going to make you the presenter, so clear your screen and accept the request to become the presenter. And you can hear me, right, Mark?
Yes, I can. When you say clear my screen,
Well, just make sure that you don't have any other programs open, that's all. Let me see. Where are you on my list? Here we go.
And
okay.
If you're on the screen that I'd like, I am showing a reading comp passage that you all did a month ago.
Okay.
Or at least the students did, not the parents.
Okay, do you see the invitation, Mark?
Show my screen. There we go.
Okay, it's not. Okay, here we go. So Mark is going to lead the way for the next 45 minutes or so, and he's going to take us through a variety of sections. And in this format, it's hard to have audience participation. We would have been able to do that if we were doing it over at Western New England University, but at least we have the comfort of your own home to participate from. So Mark, go ahead. Thank you.
I am actually willing, if you're capable of using chat, I could see something on the chat as well as Adam. But I'll presume that you're not going to be communicating back to me. I actually want to go to one thing.
Let me just interject 1 second. So if you have any questions, anyone, on any of the content, feel free to type in your chat, and I will be interjecting and stopping Mark along the way to announce the question so everyone can hear it. Okay, go ahead, Mark.
So I actually had two things before we get into this test itself. The page that Adam showed me had, and you see it too, those colorful diagrams of SAT, front page comparison, and ACT. And it looked like by 1 point on that sample, the ACT was a little bit better. 23 versus a 22. I'd like you to scroll down to something that this student didn't do that could be an equalizer. Take a look at the ACT overview and how it's all red and green. Take a look at the SAT overview. You have another color there, don't you? There was some gray, some omitted. And on a real test, you should never omit, because you have 1 in 4 chance, even though you're clueless, and no penalty. Now, the student who did omit might have been in the old mode, because 2 years ago, if you guessed wrong on an SAT, you got hurt. You would lose a 1/4 point. But that's no longer true. And so on a real SAT, you might as well guess. And for this diagnosis, what might be marginal, if you didn't guess on certain either ACT or SAT and did guess on the other, then you might actually have an equalizer there. If this student, for example, on the SAT, it looks like there were 3 guessed questions. Probably one of them would be right. And that's 1 more point that would be an equalizer, 23 versus 23, or close. So it's another thing to consider. I have 2 other things. Adam pointed to page 91 in your booklet. On 91, there are very well laid out comparisons there, but I have 2 things that are not in there. 1 in favor of SAT, 1 in favor of ACT. Here goes. SAT is being super scored by almost every college. I'll define super scoring. It means that colleges give you the benefit of the best math that you present and the best verbal that you present from different dates. And that's why taking it twice makes sense. Even 3 times makes sense. You have no downside to an extra time, and you have upside if one section goes up on the second day and the other one doesn't. In fact, even if the other one falls, super scoring is to your advantage. Only about half the colleges super score the ACT. There's 4 sections, they don't want to deal with it. With only 2 sections on the SAT, math and reading are considered just the only 2 sections they care about for multiple choice. It ends up meaning that the SAT, which is super scored by 95% of colleges, might be advantageous. Now here's the other side. The ACT is the more coachable test right now. The ACT has pretty much stayed the same for the last 20 years. The SAT got revised 2 years ago, and it's still under contortions. It is still changing in sometimes hard to predict ways. Not hugely, but a little bit. I'm from a coaching company. I founded Ivy Bound. I am here to help my students get so used to a test that real test day is not very different from practice tests and what you've been studying. We can pretty much assure that on the ACT. It's a little harder to assure that on the SAT. So, all things being equal, if you're a student who would commit to a lot of coaching, that you're really hardcore trying to get the best score possible, and that does mean a sacrifice of time and fun. So, look, I was a teenager too. I get it. And if you don't want to have that sacrifice, the SAT might be better because there's less stuff. But the ACT, though there's more stuff to learn, it is the more coachable test, so that might weigh in favor of ACT. We as a company do both, and if your parents or you want to get in touch with us later on, ivybound.net is the place you can go. I'm here for you now, and I'd like you to take a look quietly, since it was a month ago, and for parents looking on, you've never even seen this. Or maybe you have, because maybe when you were in high school, you had to read Robinson Crusoe. Well, this is the beginning of it, and for the next, I'll give it 2.5 minutes. I'd just like it to be silent, take a reread, we'll then regroup and go over some questions. Emma, welcome. We're just reading quietly. All right, let us regroup. For those just joining, I'm Mark Greenstein. I want to start at the end of the passage, which is now at the top of my screen. So page 13 in your booklets. It's a paragraph with some tough vocabulary. And this is one characteristic of the SAT. There will be harder vocabulary than on the ACT. Now, hard is not necessarily bad in testing. Why? Because for the kid, and that might be you, who's willing to master hard things, you have an advantage. For the kid who's willing to build her or his vocabulary, you're going to get more of an advantage. The SAT has passages that are old. This is the extreme so far. Robinson Crusoe from, look, 299 years ago, 1719 is when it was published. Now, that is the oldest I've seen so far, but who knows? Maybe they'll give us Chaucer from the 1300s next time. You can expect this. On the SAT, there will be a passage from the 19th century or older. ACT's fiction is not as bad. It may go back 100 years, but it still doesn't have the really tough, weird wordings that the SAT seems to like to pick on with one of its 5 passages. I want to make this a little bit group-oriented. So since you do have the chance to chat, I'm going to encourage vocabulary to come from, well, I'll pick on 3 of you. Actually, I'll pick on 6 of you. We have 2 Zacharys, we have 2 Carolines, and we have 2 Tracys. If any of you want to give over in a chat the vocabulary from this last paragraph, that word calamities, write it in for me. That word, and me is just 1, so the college advisor will see it, and you won't be showing it to the rest of us. You can also tell us if you know vicissitudes, line 70. And let's talk about this whole passage. This is about, and I thought it was kind of a fun passage, the start of a guy who goes on a sailing venture, eventually gets marooned. For those of you whose parents grew up to Gilligan's Island, okay? I used to watch that after school on my network television. That was the thing you did at 4:30 in the afternoon if you grew up in the 70s. This was sort of a Nick at Night still has it. This is the predecessor, Robinson Crusoe. Here come the questions. Yes.
Excuse me, Mark. Mark, can you see the chat?
I can't see a reply. I only see your last comment from 619.
Okay. All right. So we have one. Do you want the responses now?
Next one. After I do number 1, I'll go to the vocab. So number 1, let's do, you can put them up for me now. That's fine. You can put them up. So number 1, asks main purpose. Expect that whether that's SAT or ACT. And the purpose ought to pervade more than one paragraph. This is a tempting wrong answer when you end up picking an answer that is true of just paragraph 3, but there were 5 other paragraphs. It's not good enough. The answer here is B, but I do want to talk about why C is wrong. It's very close. This deserves scrutiny. Let's scrutinize together. C, provide an overview of how a family, good, in the early 1600s, good, decided on the best way to have a life of ease and pleasure. I have 2 problems with it. They're minor, but they're enough to make it inferior to choice B. Number 1 is the word best, and I'd like everyone to circle that word. The word best is an absolute. Absolute words are extremes. The number 1 means the best. Extremes are hard to prove, making them harder to be right on an SAT or an ACT question. I think what was true in the passage is they talked about a decent way of life, but the word best, I'm not sure was well fleshed out. The other one is the word ease. You know, ease means leisurely. And the father did not expect life to be leisurely. You have to work. And then you can get a good, in the end, lifestyle. But the word ease, I think, is out of line. So because they had to work, that's why C falls away. I am happy to look at vocab if you want to send it along. And I'm not seeing it yet in the chat box.
Yeah, I don't think that I could, Mark. I'll have to share them verbally because I don't think I can.
All right. Did anyone get calamities?
So, calamities, problems, struggles, misfortunes.
Yes. Whoever got that, your vocabulary there, right on. And misfortunes plague Robinson Crusoe later on. He foreshadows it in this piece, and it comes up later. Now, if you're studying vocab and didn't know calamities, here's my way of reinforcing it. I'm kind of old-fashioned. I like the index card. But anyone who has used Quizlet, I love that. That's the new-fashioned way, and parents who aren't exposed to it, Quizlet.com. A lot of kids learn foreign languages using those. You can put word and definition. Quizlet builds up your entries and then saves them, spits them out at you in a different order. You can play games with speed on them. I think it's a very good way to reinforce vocabulary on the SAT as well. Adam, did anyone have vicissitudes?
No, there was only one response. And it was
Adam,
for calamity.
do you want to tell us your take on vicissitudes?
What's that?
Then I will. I was going to ask you if you knew it. I'll give it over.
Well, go ahead.
They're the ups and downs. They're good things and bad things that often happen in the same long block of time. So vicissitudes, you could write down, if you wanted Quizlet, ups and downs. So let's go to why vocabulary might be important. Look at question 2. That fourth word, dissolution, not an easy word.
Hey, Mark, you have to scroll down a little bit. Just scroll down a little bit. It's a little hard to see.
There it is.
Okay.
So, if you don't have your booklet, you'll be looking at me. Dissolution means a dissolving. It's no longer intact. And I like the first word better because it's shorter. So you could write down dissolution equals dissolving. Right answer here was evolution, which fit well with that version of corruption. Now, you might have thought of corruption, well, that's like people who go to jail. They do bad things. But in this case, it's being used differently, intentionally so by the SAT. Again, they're picking on something that's 299 years old. Let's now go to number 3. It's a dual question because 3 and 4 are related. And this is a little bonus on the SAT that does not happen on the ACT. The right answer is D, that the author said his parents did not know what happened to him. Well, how do I know that that's the right answer? I look back. I'm willing to find support for any detailed question. Okay, big picture questions, I often don't need to look back, but details, darn, I'm going to look back and make sure. Lines 18 and 19 made it quite clear. 18 and 19 said, I'll read it, "What became of my second brother I never knew, any more than my father or mother knew what became of me." D is well supported. And because we found that good support, look at the reward we get for question 4. It's a freebie. It's what we've asked ourselves to do to answer question 3. Now the SAT is saying, how'd you find it? This becomes the easiest answer on the whole, in all of SAT land. Lines 17 through 19, we picked it off already. We get that again in numbers 5 and 6. SAT saying, the narrator indicates his choice to go to sea led him to a life of. The right answer is woe. Woe is something sad. How did I know that woe was right? I look back, and in lines, looks like 31 and 32, he says, tending directly to the life of misery, which was to befall me. Misery is woe. I found it. I feel really good about question 5 being C. And now question 6. The beautiful follow-up, second point for the taking. B must be right. We found it already in the passage. ACT doesn't do this. However, whether it's ACT or SAT, I'm going to leave you with a reading comp strategy. You should find support for every answer, no matter what, even if they don't ask a follow-up question like these do, find support. There is always either direct or implied support. Implied's a little harder because it means you need to take an extra step in logic. But if you're taking a step from nowhere, it's a wrong answer. If you're taking a step from something that's in the passage, you have a good chance of it being right. All right, I'm going to move to section 3. It's ACT. And by the way, I skipped section 1 for a reason. Section 1 is a lot like section 4. It was the SAT grammar section, and section 4 is the grammar for the other test. They almost always act the same. They look the same. your results are almost surely close, okay? In fact, I'd like to know if somebody had a discrepant score between 1 and 4, you don't have to tell me tonight, that was way different. I'd like to know, because usually those are the two sections that act very, very similarly. Let's go to section 3 together. So in your real booklet, I want to do just the last 3 questions. The last 3 in the booklet should be on page 30. And they're supposedly hard. The ACT moves from easy to hard somewhat. It's not a direct increase, but to some extent, it's a little easier in the early numbers, a little harder, supposedly, in the late numbers. Well, let me say that these last 3 questions are not hard to somebody who gets used to things, okay? They might have been hard for you now, and let's take a look and see how you can attack at any level where you are now. None of these math questions are beyond you. Number 28. After 5 weeks of his new training regimen, Luke notices that the number of miles he has run each week forms a geometric sequence. During the first 3 weeks, Luke ran 2 2/7, 3 3/7, 5 1/7 miles, respectively. How many miles did he run during the 5th week? Before I look at answers, I want to get a sense of this progression. Does it seem direct? Does it seem to be increasing? Does it seem to be decreasing? Seems to be increasing. To be specific, from 2 2/7 to 3 3/7, he has gone up by 1 1/7 miles. The next week, he's gone up almost 2 miles. He's gone up by 1 5/7, 3 3/7 to 5 1/7. So this is increasing in the distance between weeks. Now we'd like to do a formation that, since they say it's geometric, it means there's an increasing percentage. I have a hard time doing percentages with these mixed numbers. I'm going to convert it into clean fractions. They're all on top of 7. So let's turn it into a top-heavy fraction. 2 2/7 is 16/7. 3 3/7, it's 24/7. Let's convert them both. 16 and 24. What's the ratio between them? 24 is 8 more than 16, which is half of 16 on top of it. It's a 50% increase. I'll say that again. To go from 16 to 24, we know is a 50% increase. Let's see what happens between the next 2 weeks. We've got 24/7, and now we're going to a mixed number that would be 35 plus 1, 36/7. 36 is 12 more than 24. That's 50% again on top of the 12. Now I know my progression, and I'd like you guys to lock it in by saying plus 50%. You write it down. Plus 50%. That's the progression that's known. Now we go into unknown territory. We boldly go to week 4, and we go from 36 to 50% more than 36. You can use a calculator on this section, so let's go at it. 1.5 times 36 is 54. So week 4, you could write down 54/7. And we got one more week to go. Let's do it one more time. 1.5 again times 54 is 81/7. That's the answer I'm looking for. Circle it. 81/7. Oh, but among those 5 answer choices, I don't see 81/7. Nobody does. Why? Because it's another mixed number. We've got to turn it back into a mixed number after all. So how do you do that? you take the multiple of 7 that's closest to 81, at 77, and know that that's 11 sevens with 4 remaining. That's choice J, 11 with 4 remaining. Took a while, but I don't think the math is beyond any of you. Let's go to 29. I doubt the math is beyond you here either. However, it's probably weird. I never saw anything like this in 4 years of high school math. And I went to good math, had good classes. But nobody asked me the way the ACT is doing this. Would you please circle the term in line 29, multiple solutions? If you have multiple solutions to 2 equations, it means one is a multiple of the other. Nobody told me that in high school. I'm telling that to you now. One equation is a multiple of the other. Ladies and gentlemen, we now have a clean equation on top and a one with variable below. But because one's a multiple of the other, watch how easy this becomes. I see a coefficient 15 on top of the 5. That's the one that I know. 15 is 3 times 5. Since the whole equation is a multiple of the other, that means it's a triple across the board. 3 times something is 12. That something is going to be 4. And 4 looks like it's going to stand in for our B. Now, let me be a little more careful. I shouldn't have said 12. I should have said negative 12. So to be truly careful, it's 3 times negative 4 that gets me negative 12. And on the final, so I just answered my B. I just did. If I'm feeling a little scared, I'd like to reinforce this, let's go to the final term, the number term on the right. It will also be negative 4. It has to be. It has to be because B is B, is B. Wherever B shows up, it's got to be the same variable. We're pretty certain that we like negative 4 thanks to the coefficient of the y. But just to make sure, on the 2b side, I need 1/3 of 24. That's 8. And negative 2 times something is 8. That something must be negative 4. No surprise, we figured that out beforehand. Choice B, once again, is the answer. By the way, did we even need the equation that they gave us at the top? I didn't touch it. You didn't miss anything. I didn't talk about y equals 5/4 x minus 2. Now, that's a rarity that something is totally irrelevant on an SAT or an ACT. But sometimes it happens, and there's stuff that you don't need to get a clean solution. I'm going to give you a reverse product that's a little more helpful, though. Let's say there's something that you haven't paid attention to, and you still haven't gotten to an answer. You don't feel good about an answer yet. Please use the final piece. Ask yourself, well, how does this new thing that I didn't pay attention to work its way in? That may answer your question for you. That's the majority, that every piece of information is needed. This is one of the few times that you had something superfluous. All right, last math question. Literally the supposedly hardest one on ACT Section 3. And it's not that hard. I can't draw, but you can. Will every one of you please drop a line vertically from point B? Drop it vertically to the DC line, and you're constructing a triangle. Not just any triangle, but the favorite triangle in test prep, the 30, 60, 90. And this may be the umpteenth time you've heard it, but some of you, it might be the first time. I want to tell you the proportions in 30, 60, 90 triangles. You need to know them. ACT and SAT love them. I took the ACT 2 times ago in November, and this very triangle, the 30, 60, 90, came up on 3 of their questions. Here's the proportions. On 30, 60, 90 triangle, the shortest side is half the distance of the longest side. In this case, BC would be the longest side in the 30, 60, 90. It's 8. The short side that we've created with our vertical line would therefore be 4, half of 8. On a 30, 60, 90, the middle side, which becomes the height, it's the line you just drew actually, it's √3 times the shortest side. In this case, √3 times 4. And you should just write down 4√3. That's the height, 4√3. √3 is an ugly number. I'll give you an approximation though, 1.7. 1.7, good enough. Now, I have 2 ways of getting the whole area. Way 1 is to add rectangle plus triangle. Let's do that, and then we'll do way 2. The rectangle that you created with your vertical line has a base of 12. Remember, we're knocking off 4, so the base of that rectangle is 12. The height is 4√3, and we can multiply 4 times √3, or 1.7, times 12. Then you would add the triangle's area, which is base times height divided by 2. So the height is 4√3, the base is 4, and divided by 2. You could add those together, and you're going to come up with approximately 96. Only one answer is even in the ballpark. That's choice H. Let me give you way 2. Some of you know that there's a formula for a trapezoid. The area of a trapezoid, that's what this is 1/2 the average of the bases. Sorry, not the half. It's the average of the bases times the height. The average of the bases, in this case, 16 is the lower base. 12 is the AB length, the upper base. And so the average is 14. Halfway between 12 and 16, it's 14. Multiply that by your height, 4√3 times 14. I come up with 95.2. And once again, the only choice that's close is H. And probably the reason why I was a little low in both cases is because 1.7 was a slightly lower approximation of √3. I think it's like 1.72. Putting that together, 97 will be very good. That's it for ACT math. And these were supposedly hard. They're not that hard, especially if you'll memorize things like 30, 60, 90, having proportions of 1 to √3 to 2. 1 to √3 to 2, we really like. All right, now to section 4, and I'm actually going to go to the last of the set. It is page 37. I'll try and scroll to it. It starts with question 12. Now remember, 4 is a lot like 1. Okay, this is SAT version. ACT section 1 acts almost the same way. I chose this passage of all the ones out there because of 2 things that I actually don't understand: cosmetics and art. And both of them are involved in this passage. I don't understand art very well, and I certainly don't understand why certain cosmetics are valued so highly when it just seems like it's all marketing. If somebody could explain to me why Estee Lauder, this guy's line of fragrances, is that highly valued over some equally nice smelling scent, tell me. Let's go to the actual SAT, ACT work. On number 12, I'm going to give you a strategy please write down these 3 words. Detail is good. Some teachers never tell you this. Detail is good. And on the ACT and SAT, sentences that add appropriate detail are welcomed. That's why the answer when they ask in 12, would you like to delete the underlined portion? The answer should be no. It gives detail. It lets us really envision the importance of this. It might draw somebody into like being interested in the first place. Ooh, I want to understand Picasso, or I've heard of this guy Grease. So adding the detail on the SAT and ACT is almost always welcome, so long as it's relevant. Thus, choice C and D are the no answers. Don't delete them, keep them in. What's wrong with D, though? C is the right answer. D, no, because the underlined portion gives an example of a particular cubist work. But it doesn't. There is no example given. We don't see Brock with some square inside of a beach with sand. I don't see an example being described. So don't let the SAT push you around and say, oh, it gave an example of a cubist work when it didn't. C is the right answer. Let's skip down to number 14. And there, I have 3 more words for you. Please write these down. Brevity is good. And this is something many English teachers fail to instill. There's a lot of people under the impression that flowery prose is especially good. Using big words or more words is somehow more impressive. Well, it's not impressive to the SAT and the ACT. They want you to use the fewest words that'll still give you clarity. Clarity's number 1. If it requires lots more words to make something clear, they want that. But when there's a redundancy, they want you to get rid of it. When there's a cleaner expression, we want the cleaner, which is usually fewer words, to make it happen. Notice how few words are in the right answer. They've underlined in 14 5 words. Donation to the Metropolitan Museum. Right answer, 1 word. Donation. That's all you needed. Now, why can I confidently get rid of the Metropolitan Museum? Because in 1 paragraph earlier, they mentioned New York City's Metropolitan Museum of Art. There it is. It's only 1 paragraph earlier, and it's the only museum they're talking about, so they don't need to restate it here. All right, let's turn the page, and for me, that'll be a scroll. We will do question 16. I love 16. The word there is a pronoun. Pronouns refer to some antecedent noun, and they need to match. There is referring to the Met. 1 line earlier, the Met. That is singular. That museum is a singular entity. There applies to plural, so it cannot be right. The right answer is its. Uh-oh, I have a homonym, a word that sounds the same but is written 2 different ways. SAT likes playing on these too. Its is both C and D. What's the difference? D is the apostrophe S, which means contraction. IT apostrophe S means it is. That's it. Possessive, which normally does have an apostrophe. But for some reason, the English language said IT without an apostrophe S is the right way to do possessive. I know when we have something belonging to Adam, Adam's students, it's ADAM apostrophe S. That's the norm when you talk possessive. But this is an exception. The exception, IT, no apostrophe S, still means possessive. I can think of another word like that. We don't have HE apostrophe S to say belonging to he. The English language a long time ago just said, we'll call that word his, HIS, and that became standard. Well, before we leave 16, another homonym, choice B versus choice A. They both say there. Make sure you know that. I know you know the difference. Make sure you don't get sucked in to the wrong homonym. THERE is a place. It's a whereabouts. It does not mean belonging to them. Thus, thus the right answer, C, is good. Both of theirs are wrong. Let's go to number 18. 18 somewhat tests vocabulary. It takes you to the underline esoteric. Esoteric is not a word I knew in high school. Congratulations if you do. And I will tell you, esoteric means something that's not readily understood. It's not common. And they would like to have a replacement in 18 that means esoteric by incorporating such esoteric entities. What they like to do is to say I shouldn't have said that it means esoteric. It's because they're not esoteric. I said that badly. Undo. I apologize. They're not themselves esoteric. They are the common things. They are sawdust, rope, bits of newspaper. And thus, C and D as answer choices are pretty good. Commonplace, that's choice D, but it's not right. Every day, that's choice C, that is right. And those two words mean about the same thing. I'm going to ask you what's wrong with D. Because everything except one little bit is good about D. Meanwhile, before I get to you, let's go to what's wrong with B. Anachronistic, another vocab word, means wrong time, way too old, out of date. That's not what was being talked about. Picasso in his time was proper. He was in his date. So anachronistic does not fit sawdust, rope, bits of newspaper, which are any sort of time. Nothing is out of time there. All right. Would anyone like to chat to Adam? What's wrong with D? And everyone should scrutinize it. Adam, anything come through yet?
I'm double checking. Yeah, someone said such is one of the words being replaced. Another person said redundant wordage.
I'm not going to accept either of them. Let's keep going, and maybe someone will come up with another reason.
Another person said the word as. Another person said commonplace.
That's it.
Ordinary.
That's it. I'm going to stop there. Anyone who felt that as was the problem, it's different from the word like. Like is correct here, as is not. Let me tell you why. Like compares nouns, as is used for phrases. What's a phrase? It's a noun with a verb. A noun alone takes like. A phrase takes a noun plus a verb which uses as. The example, be like Mike. For those who were in the Michael Jordan era, be like Mike. Mike is a noun. Do as Michael Jordan does. That's also proper. The as is being used with a phrase. Michael Jordan does. Play as Michael Jordan plays. Then you can use as because you have noun plus verb. If you only have noun, you use like. And that's not in the explanation to this otherwise very good booklet, but they didn't include that here. All right, I want to move to section 5. It's the ACT reading, and I'm not going to make you read this one over, okay? If you didn't read it, no difference than if you didn't remember it. I would like to go to a strategy that is inherent on the ACT, but it seems to be gone from the SAT. It's number 6. Number 6 on section 5 has a 2-word strategy. Find it. Find 3 things that were done. And the 4th thing, which wasn't done, is the right answer. Someone who didn't even read this could still find 3 features of the father's old home. You got to scan, you got to look for these things. It might take time, but it's actually an easy answer, even if you haven't read the passage. G is the right answer. It was not mentioned. Deep Well was mentioned in lines 14 and 15. King Orchard was mentioned in line 13. Big Willow was answered in line 64. Number 9 is pretty much a find it as well. How do I find it? Even if the read was blurry.
Can you scroll, Mark? Scroll down.
Thank you. Yep. Yeah. Number 9. It's asking about 2 proper names, Charlottetown and Carlisle. Use your scanning skills. It's a capital C. There aren't that many of them. They use Charlottetown, line 34. But I don't see Carlisle there. I keep going. They use Charlottetown again. Carlisle at line 58. And right before that, they talk about a 24-mile drive. Aha! I guess the distance is B, 24 miles. I haven't even read the passage. I've picked off a couple answers. Now, this is a little more characteristic of the ACT. It's a very fast-paced reading, but you get a lot of questions without needing to read. Just find stuff. SAT, by contrast, it's pretty hard to find without a read. There'll be a few, but typically you need the whole context on the SAT. I want to do only one other question in section 5. It is, wait, we might be done in 5. We are. We're moving on. Section 6, question 10. That's page 49 in your books. It uses I. The SAT seems to like this new thing, I. It's new to them. The ACT has used I for imaginary before. You guys learned a long time ago that I is the square root of -1. They gave it to you anyway, just in case you haven't learned that. But you really need to apply it. What does -1 inside of root really mean? It means that when you square it, you get -1. The house comes off. It's house times house. Negative square root of -1 squared is -1 itself. So there's 2 steps to solving this. The first is to recognize I squared will be itself -1. The other part is to break out that parentheses. And remember how we do that? We distribute the 2 in a FOIL fashion. I'm going to say it because I can't write it. It would read like this. When I do, it's called foiling. 2 plus 2i, I get 4 plus 8i plus 4i squared. Write that down if this troubled you. 4 plus 8i plus 4i squared. Now, we just said that I squared is -1. How good is that? They just created a problem that wiped out 4 with -4. All I've got in that ugly long parentheses is just 8i. 4 and -4 wiped each other out. Now it's an easy distribution. I cubed times 8i, and that combines to become 8i to the fourth. Since I squared is -1, I to the fourth is +1, and thus we have the nice clean number 8. How good is that? All right, I'm running out of time, so I'm going to skip to the SATs math, section 7, and I'd like to do number 10. So 10 to 10. This one's got a chart. This chart has hypothetical candidate X and Y and a survey. And SAT's putting lots of survey questions on. ACT doesn't seem to be interested in surveys. SAT does. By the way, the SAT is becoming, the math anyway, is more practical. The verbal is not. The verbal has all these Daniel Defoe, Robinson Crusoe, really old passages. But on the math side, the SAT tries to make things that are relevant. And by the way, realistic. Realistic is important because it helps you get occasionally rid of some wrong answers that look unrealistic. So let's be real here. How about if we call candidate X a female and candidate Y a male? Okay? And maybe we name these for some candidates that we once knew in 2016. How about candidate Y we will call Bernie? And who do you think I will call candidate X? Right, Hillary. And look at the layout here. It actually sort of fits. Bernie was sort of the favorite of younger people 2 years ago. And ages 25 to 34, the younger group, look, they prefer candidate Y, 89 to 40. Older people, they were more of Hillary fans. And 53 to 38, that's their breakdown on line 2, 53 to 38. Now we deal with the questions. 10 says, which is the closest to the percent of those who preferred Hillary? Now be careful in the numbers that you pick. This is all those. They're combining top line and the middle line. So the number that we want is the bottom line, 93, out of the total on the bottom line, 220. 93 out of 220 is about 42%. B is the right answer. I'm going to skip number 11, but I'm going to note something. If you want to go back to number 11, whether it was intentional or not, they gave you an extraordinary combination to make things easy. Circle the number in number 11, 2.2 million. Third line. Circle at the top, let me go back to the graph, bottom right box, 220. Look familiar? Holy cow. When they did this question, you had an easy 53 out of 220 is an exact ratio, 53 to 220, here we go, to choice B in number 11. 53 to 220, there's a bunch of zeros at the end, but it works out beautifully for choice B. Now, there's an in-between method. I'm not going to get into that because of time. Let's do number 12, though. That one interests me more. My final admonition, another two-word phrase. Ready?
Mark, scroll back up.
Sorry.
There you go.
My final admonition, be careful. Be careful. Because there's lots of numbers you could pick here. Being careful means following their English. Line 2 says in number 12, 25 to 34-year-old, okay, that's the top line in our graph, to prefer candidate Y, that's the middle column where it's the number is 89. 89 out of what? 89 out of 129 is the percentage preferring Bernie. Now, write that fraction down, 89 over 129. If you have a calculator, you could get a percentage out of it. Next, be careful. It's the second line, lines 35 to 44, and candidate Y. Again, don't go to candidate X. Candidate Y is 38 out of a total of 91. You could do that ratio as well. And what are they finally asking for? How many times more likely is the 89 to 129 compared to the 38 to 91? Sorry. You would want to put your two new percentages one on top of the other, and you'd end up with a 1.65. Let's say this weren't in the calculator section. Let me give you a way to sort of cheat. You know that 89 out of 129 is pretty hefty, okay? You know that it's like 3/4 of the way. You know that 38 versus 91 is less than halfway. So you have a ratio that should be bigger than 1, but not double. What's the only answer choice that's bigger than 1, but not double? Correct. It's C, 1.65. The other math I'd like to do is number 16. Number 16 involves a formula or 2 or 3. And every one of those formulas is actually placed earlier, but I don't want my students to rely on them. Here's where they are. Those formulas are given on the SAT for you. I want my students to memorize them so you don't need to go back. I want them to be on the tip of your brain, and that allows you to save time. There's a sphere formula. Lock it in now. Volume is 4/3 pi r cubed. We will need it for this question. A cone formula. Volume is 1/3 pi r squared h. Now let's see how it comes into play. Which of the following solids has the greatest volume? A says a right circular cylinder whose radius is 6 centimeters and whose height is 3 centimeters. That's a pretty fat but squat cylinder. Let's do the math. Pi r squared h is how you do a cylinder formula. 6 squared times pi times the height is 108 pi. Write that down. Let's see how it compares. B, right circular cylinder whose radius is 3 centimeters and whose height is 6. Now, some people say, well, that's equal. No, it's not, because one of these is getting squared and one of them is not getting squared. So when the bigger thing is getting squared, you have a huge result. That's why A is in the lead, because the bigger thing, 6, is getting squared. The smaller thing in B is getting squared. So A is in the lead. I don't even care what the number is. It has to be A being bigger than B. Let's go to C. A cone. A cone is only 1/3 of a cylinder. Assuming the same height, it's a third. So it's going to be even smaller than our original. You don't even have to do the math. The cone is going to be smaller. Finally, there's sphere. And let's look back to the formula. I'll tell you rather than scroll. 4/3 pi r cubed. Let's see what happens when we take r to the 3rd power. Sounds high, but it's not. 3 times 3 times 3. It's only 27. Multiply that by 4/3 and you're up to 36. Our original was 108. 36 is the smallest of these. So A is the winner by a lot. Last one is section 8. I will do passage 2. There it is. The experiment is not worth reading, with one exception. There's a type of passage on the ACT science where they don't even give you a table. When that happens, you pretty much have to read. Until that happens, I actually like being directed by the questions and then seeing how the data in the table play it out. I don't know any science, okay? I know nothing about what theta might be. I did badly in physics. It doesn't matter. Watch how these become gettable questions. Number 7. Based on combinations 1 through 4, okay, so I go to the table. Table 1 shows, lower left, combinations 1 through 4. And I see when they talk about the relationship between H and X, H is going up steadily, 0.5 at a time. X is going up, but it looks like it's decreasing. Let's draw a picture in our mind of that. Up, but not as steeply each time. It's a decreasing up. I thus am looking for not a straight line, but something that's shallowing, getting shallower. Something a little bit like choice D. D is a little bit perturbed. B is terrible. That's going down. B doesn't look right because it's got a straight line in it. Oh, look at A. A. Just the kind of curving off progression that we expect. This is the right answer, and this is the faster way than trying to go point by point by point times possibly 16 points. I don't want my students spending that much time on it. All right, let's do number 8. 8 says, according to table 1 and combinations 5 through 10, so let me try and get all of that on the same page. And it's close. No, we're not quite there, but 5 through 10 show column H always the same, 1.5 across the board. As theta increases, though, theta is the second column. It goes from 15 up through 40 pretty consistently. And then X, which is the final column, it's not consistent, is it? Up, down, and that is described in the answer choices to 8. We want up and then down. Choice 8, answer H, increases, then decreases. It's that simple. I still don't know what's going on in the experiment, but I got 2 answers right. Let's see if I can go 3 for 3. I'm skipping number 9. It's not that great of a question. Let's do 10, and with that, I will call it a night. 10. If experimental trials were conducted in the same manner for combinations 11 through 14, and you should be able to see those now, what would be the independent variable and what would be the dependent? Circle those 2 words if you're not familiar with them. The dependent is the thing that is a result. The independent is what you get to change. It changes according to how you manipulate the experiment. So in 11 through 14, we can see no change in the second column. It's always 25. No change in the first column. It's always 1.5. But the third column changes, and the fourth column changes. The third column is changed the way we're planning on. We're doing a 0, we're doing a 5, a 10, and a 15. The result is the second column, and the result is therefore the dependent. Let's look at the names of those 2 columns, F and X. F is thus independent, X is dependent, answer is H. I still don't know anything about the experiment, and I get 3 right out of 3. It should allow me to tell you that ACT science is not based on your prior knowledge of physics or chemistry or biology. It's not giving an advantage to the kid that's really good at it. It's not a disadvantage to somebody who hasn't seen it, because they're giving you reasoning interpretations, which every one of you can do, more so than they're testing any hard science that was learned before. All right, I'm a little over time, but hopefully not much, and I hope this has been helpful. Let me turn it back to Adam. Let me wish you guys a great test prep, good winter, stay warm.
Thank you, Mark. Really appreciate that. It was definitely a fast pace, and tonight's session was not designed to be a prep course, but really to give some tip of the iceberg strategies and to help you understand some of the distinctions between the ACT and the SAT, and to also help you see that there are definitely some tricks and strategies that you're going to want to learn over time. Our staff will be contacting you all over the next several days into next week, just to follow up from tonight. A lot of you will probably have questions on what's the best way to prep, so on and so forth. I will send out an email with some information on Mark's company, as well as some self-directed online video-based prep as well. So there's different strokes for different folks. The key thing is that you should all be prepping this winter and not carrying the uncertainty of your test scores into the senior year. Our goal is that you'll be done with your standardized testing going into this summer, which means this is the time of the year that you're going to want to do your preparation, because you'll take the tests officially during the springtime. Take a look at your diagnostic reports. It gives you a lot of information. If you are still unsure as to which test to focus on, send me an email. That's totally fine. And make sure you utilize your test booklets, starting with page 70, which has the answer solutions, and then page 90 gives you a lot of information on the differences between the tests. Those are good to use whether you're using a prep service or not. And so those are good tools for you. With that, I'm going to sign off and thank you all for coming to the webinar. Sure beats getting out into the snow, and I'm glad we didn't have to reschedule. Thank you, everyone, and good luck. We'll talk to you over the next couple of days. Good night.
I can't believe that was over an hour. It seemed to go so fast for me anyway.